The offensive rebounding collapse, how the analytics revolution abandoned 503 points per season. League-wide offensive rebounding has fallen from 43% from its 1973 peak to a 2020 nadir driven by the three-point revolution's demand that everyone sprint back on defense. The data across 50 seasons shows the gap between the best and worst offensive rebounding teams in 25-26 was worth 503 points. Nobody's talking about it. But we are talking about it here at NetWins, netwins.substack.com. Subscribe to receive posts and support my work. The analytics revolution changed how teams build rosters, select shots, and structure offenses. It also, almost as a side effect, convinced nearly every team in the NBA to stop doing something that generates free possessions. That something is offensive rebounding. The NetWins database covers every NBA season back to 1973 and even earlier, but offensive rebounds from that point on. Here's what offensive rebounding measured as offensive rebounding per team per game has done across that window. In the pre-3-point line era, they were 13.8 offensive rebounds per game, a total of 33.6% offensive rebounding percentage of all available rebounds. In the next era, from 1980 to 86, early three-point adoption, it was 12.7 and 33%. In the physical era, from 87 to 94, it was 12.5, 32.5%. The post-Jordan era, roughly 95 through 2004, it went down to 11.2 at 29%. The analytics birth from 2005 through 2011, 9.9, 26.6. The three-point revolution, from 2012 to 16, 9.5, down to 24%. The three-point peak from 2017 to 21, it was at its bottom, 9.1, 22.5%. And the modern era, 22 through the 26 season, 9.9, 24.8. So the peak of 13.8 offensive rebounds per game was in 73. The trough was 7.85 in 2020, the COVID shortened season that also happened to coincide with peak three-point volume. Total decline from the peak to the trough, 43.1%. The decline is in a random variation. It tracks almost perfectly with the rise of three-point volume. As teams began launching 25 and 30, then 35 plus three-point attempts per game, the mathematics of crashing the offensive glass changed. Missing a three-pointer requires 5 players to run a long distance to recover defensive position, and the cost of giving up a transition opportunity off a missed corner 3 exceeded the expected value of the potential offensive board. Teams made a rational choice. The offensive rebound died. What's notable in the modern era is that offensive rebounding rates have been quietly rising since 2020. The trough from the COVID season, but by 25-26, the league average is back to almost 10 a game. Something's shifting. Thanks for listening to NetWins. This is public, so feel free to share it. What an offensive rebound's actually worth. An offensive rebound's a free possession. The opposing team's defense is already set up, a shot's been attempted, and the offensive team recovers the ball without the defense resetting. In the modern NBA, the average possession is worth approximately 1.12 points. Every offensive rebound's worth 1.12 points, full stop. The question is only how many a team generates. So I converted offensive rebounds per game into a point value framework, setting the baseline at Oklahoma City, who is getting 9.6 rebounds per game. The gap between the best and worst offensive rebounding teams at the top was Houston with 15 offensive rebounds per game versus Milwaukee at 8.9. So that's worth approximately 6.9 possessions per game or 7.7 points per game. Over a full 82-game season, 503 points. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between a team that scores 7.7 more points per game than its opponents would expect based on shot quality alone. Across a full season, that's approximately 15 additional wins. In a league where teams separate by fewer than 2 points per game between playoff and non-playoff teams. Houston finished 52 and 30. OKC finished 64-18. The offensive rebounding gap didn't cost OKC wins. They're an elite team in every other dimension, but it illustrates the range of outcomes that offensive rebounding alone can drive. So the best offensive rebounding teams were Houston, Portland, Detroit, Phoenix, Charlotte, and the Knicks. The worst were the Bucks, the Lakers, the Thunder, the Clippers, and the Nuggets. The correlation between offensive rebounding per games and wins is positive but modest. The reason it isn't stronger is that OKC, Denver, and the Lakers are all elite teams with low offensive rebounding rates, pulling the correlation down through sheer talent at every other dimension, but the direction is consistent. The teams generating more offensive boards are on average winning more games than their shot quality alone would predict. Among qualified players who played 40 or more games and 20 or more minutes, the offensive rebounding leaders were Donovan Clingan, Mitchell Robinson, Rudy Gobert, Jalen Duren, Moussa Diabate, Zubac, Cat, Amen Thompson, Jokic. Clingan's 4.51 offensive rebounds per game as a second-year player is a standout volume number, the highest rate in the league among qualified players, but the most notable single figure in the table is Mitchell Robinson's 48% offensive rebound conversion rate, the highest of any center in the group. Robinson converts nearly half of all offensive rebounding opportunities that come his way, well above Clingan and Gobert. He was just signed by Boston, and his specific offensive rebound impact on the Celtics is covered in a companion piece to this article, which you can get at netwins.substack.com. The Amen Thompson entry remains the most positionally unusual finding, a 6'7" wing generating 2.97 offense rebounds per game explains a significant portion of Houston's league-leading team offensive rebound rate. Thompson's rebounding profile is positions a blueprint for how a team can crash the glass at 15 per game without sacrificing transition defense. Use a wing who rebounds like a big rather than sending actual bigs into traffic. So why did the abandonment happen and why it may have been a mistake? The case against offensive rebounding is well documented. When a team sends players to crash those offensive boards, those players cannot get back to defend the transition opportunity created by the missed shot. A team shooting 35 three-pointers per game and crashing hard creates a constant vulnerability to transition threes, the exact shots analytics teams identified as highest value, so they stopped crashing. The logic was correct in 2014 when defenses weren't fully optimized against it. It may be creating an inefficiency in 25-26. So it's the argument for revisiting it. The opportunity is less contested than it was. If every team has been trained not to crash for a decade, the opposing defense isn't sending as many players back to box out. The probability of recovering an offensive board is higher than when your opponents have systematically reduced their boxing out personnel over time. Number two, the transition risk is overstated for certain roster constructions. A team built around rim-running bigs like Houston or exceptional transition defenders can crash harder without the same vulnerability that a wing-heavy lineup faces. The risk-reward calculation isn't the same for every team. The third point, the point value compounds. Each offensive rebound isn't just worth 1.12 points directly. It also prevents the opponent from running the half-court offense in that possession. The value is the possession itself plus the defensive disruption. Number four, the data is already moving. League offensive rebounding rates have ticked up 3 straight years from the 2020 trough. Teams are quietly reconsidering. Houston, which led the league at 15 per game, made the playoffs. So did Detroit and New York. The teams at the bottom of the offensive rebounding table were all elite, but their offensive rebounding deficiency isn't helping them. It's a gap they're compensating for through superior shot quality and defense. The mid-range rehabilitation piece that I did in this newsletter, netwins.substack.com, argued that when every team abandons a shot type, the remaining practitioners face reduced defensive attention. The same logic applies to offensive rebounding. A league that has spent a decade training every player, coach, and front office to retreat on missed shots has created an environment where the opposing defense is structurally less prepared to box out than it was in 1990. The shot blocker in position assumption that someone will always box out the crashing offensive player is only true if defensive coaches are actively drilling it. When the league's consensus says don't crash, defensive teams gradually stop preparing for it. So Houston generated 503 more points than the World League's worst rebounding team through offensive boards alone. That advantage came from a roster construction, not a talent advantage. Clingan and Amen Thompson aren't better basketball players than the entire Denver Nuggets roster. They're operating in a lane that the Nuggets have decided isn't worth pursuing. That gap, 503 points, 5.5 possessions per game, free, is the definition of an exploitable inefficiency. The net wins database is located at willf123.github.io/NBA-net-wins. The net wins formula and all written content are original works, all rights reserved. I thank you for your time.